One that I had that I see a lot of people come to us with is that the interest rate is the most important thing when it comes to your loan. That's a big misconception that really sets people off in the wrong direction.
Welcome back to Dashdot Insider, where we help you to become a better property investor. And on today's show, I'm talking with Adam Hart. Now, Adam holds the illustrious title of having been in the most amount of different positions in Dashdot. He's been everything from an analyst to an acquisition manager. He's been in the sales team and is also currently a property portfolio strategist, helping people to design and craft their ideal property portfolios. But not only that, this episode, we really dig into a transformational story. You see, Adam has kind of lived really two major lives in his adult life. He's lived a life in hospitality, in events, and building these, amazing environments for people to express themselves. And then during COVID, he transitioned into property full time. So not only did he accelerate himself as a property investor, but he actually became a real estate professional, joining the Dashdot team and talking through that transition and how he's navigated that and what the similarities and the commonalities and also the differences between those two parts of his life were and are was really, really insightful. And I think there's a lot of lessons in this episode around how even if you are living a certain life today, you can actually live whatever life you want. Just because you're doing one thing doesn't mean you can't do another thing. And it's actually, there's a real beauty in the transition in life. I've personally gone through that a lot as well, transitioning from a different career and a different kind of lifestyle in my 20s and now in my 30s, running this amazing company, Dashdot, and doing loads of other amazing stuff. And so talking through that story, talking through some of the habits and rituals, I think it's going to be really inspiring to a lot of people who are seeking to potentially reinvent themselves and to become something new, either for the joy and the passion of wanting to pursue something different or because they want to transition to a better state in their life. I love this journey that we went on with Adam today. We asked some great questions. Now, I'd love your comments and your feedback. Make sure you subscribe as well. And without any further ado, let's get stuck right into it, and I'll see you on the inside. Welcome back to Dashdot Insider. Joining me on today's show is Adam Hart. Adam, how are you?
I'm very good, Goose. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Now, most people, well, in fact, I'm going to say probably everyone who's watching this or listening to this has no idea who you are, but I think you actually hold the record for the most number of titles or positions held at Dashdot. Is that correct? And can you introduce yourself and try and remember all of the different positions you've held at Dashdot? That'd be a pretty interesting way to start.
All right, it's going to take me a while. So my name is Adam, of course. I started off as a property analyst, so searching the wide world, looking for properties. I then moved into the acquisition manager position where I was involved in acquiring during the purchase for our clients. Then I moved for a time into the sales team, and I'm currently a property strategist. So working with clients with big picture to get them towards where they're trying to go.
That's super interesting. So, because I know that your background, you've only been in the real estate space for a little while since you joined Dashdot. So it's a very interesting journey. I want to dig into that. What's the biggest lesson, like as you've transgressed these different types of roles within Dashdot and more broadly speaking within the context of property, right? So you started out as an analyst looking at deals. Then you were an acquisition manager helping people to do the acquisition of and acquiring and building their portfolio. Then you moved into an advisory, role, helping people to work out if working with Dashdot was the right thing to do, full on, like in that kind of context as well. And now you're actually helping people to design their property portfolios. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned through all of those different parts of the journey?
How important being adaptable is. It's been really challenging. The whole thing has been just learning. All I've done the whole time I've been at Dashdot is just learn. So I've never actually felt like I'm nailing this. But when I look back, I go, well, you know what? I've come a long way. So the ability to adapt and learn has been incredibly useful.
Yeah, nice. That is a good lesson for everyone. So let's go back a little bit. So before you joined Dashdot, what were you doing and what led you to, let's start talking about that. What was your background before you joined Dashdot?
Yeah, so mostly in hospitality. So running restaurants, bars, nightclubs, being in that world. And in the lead up to starting with Dashdot, I was actually, and COVID, I was actually looking at starting my own venue. So it was a real change to move from that into the property world and into a remote job too.
Yeah, nice. That's really interesting because some people may know, and but my background was also, we'll call it broadly speaking, in hospitality. Mine was in the event side, festivals and stuff like that. So the context is kind of the same. You're providing spaces for people to have a great time and to do all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I did venue-based stuff as well, and so I understand that side of the world too. Talk to me a little bit about that. What did you really love about that whole part of your life? The hospitality, the kind of venues. Talk to me about what was cool about that and how that has shaped who you are today.
Yeah, so I started back when I was 20, so ready to have fun, hedonism and partying and all that sort of stuff. And that kind of grew, I still loved the pursuit of happiness and pleasure. But most importantly for me, it's never really been about the food or the drink. I've always been more about the people and the connection. So I'll almost use the theatre of hospitality to really connect with people and have a great time. That's been the driver for me.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Because you mentioned hedonism, and you also then said the pursuit of happiness. Like hedonism in its purest form, can actually be a good thing. It's kind of like when it can also get taken a little bit too far. So I consider myself to be a hedonist. Obviously, if anyone who's familiar with my story also knows that also led down a path of too much kind of drugs and alcohol and all of that kind of stuff. But that doesn't change that at the core, I am still a hedonist. I am seeking out to want to experience, the Epicurean delights, the outer reaches of pleasure and happiness and joy and all of that kind of pursuit. So it's very interesting that you've looped that back and said it actually wasn't about any of that kind of stuff. It was about the people. So how does that flow through to what you're doing now?
Yeah, good question. And it is something that I have experienced challenges with. So going from a face-to-face where you're energy exchanging, you're having little jokes and all that sort of stuff, to purely on Zooms, and you don't see any of the lead up or the aftermath or anything with a meeting with Zoom. You just Zoom straight in and out. So for me, it's still a challenge to be able to get that deep connection even through Zoom, but it feels really good to help people in a different way. Yeah. So I used to help people just to have fun, and it was pretty surface level. Now I'm actually helping people to get somewhere in their lives and making a big difference. And it's a lot more profound's the right word, but it feels a little bit more wholesome.
Yeah, totally. I actually went through a pretty similar kind of thing. So I started my career in events when I was like 14, right? And by the time I was like 17, 18, I was, it was my full-time professional career, and I was organizing Big Day. I was on the management team for Big Day Out and stuff like that. Big stuff. Mm. It was great because I really loved this idea of being able to create spaces for joy, like just be able to create spaces and create experiences that would drive happiness and all of this kind of. It really excited me and fulfilled me because for me, it's about impact on people. It's always been about impact on people. And so when you can create these environments that people can become enraptured and have these experiences, that's awesome. It's so powerful. But then when I was in my early 20s, I think it was probably around, call it sort of 22-ish or something, I've been doing that whole kind of large scale event thing for a few years. And then I just started thinking about all of the wastage. I was like, okay, this is cool that we're creating these events, but I could see the size of the generators that we were running. I knew how much diesel we were burning every day just to kind of put these things on. And I started to think like, man, is this the impact that I want to create? And is this how I want to do it? And I actually then had a bit of an epiphany, and I was like, nah, this is all the wrong thing. And I went away and started teaching permaculture in Ethiopia and stuff like that. Just went on the other side of thing. So, but it's quite interesting when you start to then think about, like, how can I take this concept of what I love, which is impacting people and bringing joy and all that kind of stuff, and then how can I thread that through in other areas of my life? So do you feel like that's kind of still threading through now, and you're still finding your feet on how to deliver that joy?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's just a different type of joy that we're providing to people, and it's a long-term joy. It's not just a one and done 3 hours of fun. Yeah, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, totally. When did you first start getting interested in property? Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't when you're in your 20s and just starting to get into the we'll call it hospitality, but we could also probably say party scene a little bit as well, right?
Yeah, it certainly was. It was actually pre-20. It was in my teens. I had a little inheritance from my granddad, and I hit my dad up and I said, can you go guarantor on a loan? I want to buy a house. And he said, no.
Why?
I found out later, he actually doesn't believe in private property ownership. It's against he's morally opposed to it, which wow. I need to dig into a little bit more. Yeah. I haven't dug into too much, but he doesn't believe that houses should be going up in value and people should, rents and all that sort of stuff. And he's more of a sort of socialist, believing in government providing housing and stuff like that. So it was interesting to, I didn't realize the battle that I was up against at that point. I might have put a bit more emphasis onto my ability to influence him and take him on a path down that track to help me.
What did you think his objection was then at the time? Did you think he was just being a stick in the mud and saying kind of like, stuff you, go sort it out yourself?
Oh, do you know what? I thought maybe he was just having a look at the way I was living. I was out every weekend and, having fun. And maybe he thought he was going to be stuck with the property. So I did kind of understand where he was coming from at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So you got a bit of an inheritance. You got interested in property in your teens. You didn't get to take action on that. You then went and started your career in hospitality. You went on that wild journey. What was the kind of turning point where obviously you said COVID, just before COVID, you were about to open your own venue, then COVID hit, that didn't happen. So talk to me about the transition for you, because you've had a pretty significant transition over the last couple of years, and I've been very grateful to be a part of that transition, and it's been an awesome journey for me too, to be able to share that with you. So talk to me a little bit about that. What was the kind of mental shift that you went through that said, okay, I'm actually going to leave this industry that's been such a big part of my life. I'm going to change my pathway in life. This is something that I'm passionate enough about to do that. Talk to me about that transition.
Well, it sort of started a little bit with my reduction in consumption. So I was just deciding that, party scene and alcohol and stuff, it just impacts my life too much. So pull back from that, which means that hospitality is actually a bit less fun. You throw COVID in there as well with lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. And I'm going, mate, what's the future of this industry for one? And how can I get a loan? Like, I'm trying to get a loan here, and I'm speaking to my mortgage broker, and he's like laughing at me saying, well, mate, you don't have an income. Well, what do you want me to do? I'm not a magician. And I was like, wow, okay. So it all kind of culminated at the same time. I'm trying to get a loan, and that basically smacked me in the face saying, you need to be in an industry that's not affected. At that point, I had no idea what was going to happen with COVID. For me, it could have come back in 75 strains over the next, millennia, and no face-to-face business would ever be, allowed to open again. So I was kind of just like, right now I'm on this track. I can quite easily change to this track. And so it was a pretty simple decision at that point. Dashdot had a job opening, and I was quite inspired by the way, I'd listened to the podcast heaps through COVID, and I was just wanted to be around this type of thinking. It's quite disruptive in its nature. You and Gabby and the way that you guys approach things was inspiring. And I was like, let's go.
Awesome. If you had a crystal ball, if you could go back to then, and if you had a crystal ball that said, hey, in whatever it is, 18 months or whatever it was, however long it took for kind of venues and stuff to open back up, if you had, because you said there was a bit of an uncertainty, you didn't know what the future looked like. What if it never came back? Right, I need to change, I need to get a loan. If you had a crystal ball and you knew that things were going to effectively come back to normal, would you still have made the shift?
Well, that's a good question, Goose. That is a good question, and one that I think I may have still invested perhaps in a hospitality business, but it may not have been my full-time gig. I may have thrown some money at something and helped guide, but I feel like being on the path of that I'm on with Dashdot is it feels good, and also buying houses is just fun. Yeah,
nice. So talk to me a little bit about your personal transformation journey, because I know that you've gone from, we'll call it like a hedonistic lifestyle, into a pretty, I would say you're living a pretty holistic lifestyle now. I mean, we caught up for lunch recently. You were talking about breath work. You were talking about all kinds of different stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that transformation, because it feels like you've not only had a career change, but also a change in, I'd say, lifestyle / spiritual trajectory. Is that a kind of like a reasonable thing to say? And can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm still, like you, still pursuing pleasure and just trying to navigate how I can do that and also wake up the next day with a smile on my face. The breath work that you talked about, and I'm reading a book called Wim Hof, for those of you who don't know him, is the Iceman, the crazy big Dutch guy that jumps in frozen lakes and stuff. And cold exposure and breath work combined together have become quite a big part of my life, believe it or not. A year ago, I'd never heard of either of them. And I still think it's weird when I'm talking about it. But together, breath work can actually get you high. I've cried my eyes out. I've felt other people's pain. I've had all these quite unique experiences that perhaps I wouldn't have had unless I was, in an altered state of consciousness, which is basically where it can take you if you're doing this kind of shamanistic breathing where you basically get out of your head. Those things combined, especially the cold exposure, allows me to practice discipline, which I've never really had a lot of. Being a hedonist, should we have a drink? Yeah, off we go. Where's shots? And where's your discipline gone? Oh, my rubber arm. That we talk about it, right? That's been me. And so to practice discipline, to practice doing something that I actually don't want to do, which is having cold showers or having a cold immersion, which mentally is challenging to get into, enables me to really feel good afterwards and challenge myself.
Didn't you go on a retreat where you went up into the mountains and for like a week or something and rolled around in the snow? Like, talk to me about that.
Pretty much, yeah. We did cold exposure, so like the sun's going to. We'd just done some breath work where I'd bawl my eyes out. People had shared stuff that they hadn't shared at any time in their life. I think that's the thing that I like about it is the connection that you feel, kind of the vulnerability. The walls come down on everybody, and you really get to experience connection that's not normal in normal life. And after we did that, so we had this incredible connection. This is the first day. The sun's going down, and we're all in our swimmers, and we're walking off to a frozen lake. We had to crack the top of this lake, like it had an inch or maybe a couple of centimeters of ice. We had to smash it to get into this lake, and then we sat in there for 5 minutes or something, arm in arm. And at that point, this is where the story went in. I was like, I can't do this. This is so bad, and I was freezing. I was like jackhammering. And people beside me were making sure I was okay. And that was a really horrible experience. But subsequently, it got easier and easier and better and better. And I realized that if I was there for other people, my pain and my suffering ceased to exist, which was quite an interesting experience.
Super interesting. So if you focused on serving other people, you stopped focusing on your own discomfort, pain, disease, and stuff like that. Is that
correct?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a really interesting kind of concept and principle to more broadly take, but not just when you're arm in arm jumping into a frozen lake, but to apply in the rest of your life, right? That's pretty profound.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me then a little bit about what you have learned being on the inside at Dashdot. More specifically, what are some of the common misconceptions that you've seen the people that have about real estate investing? You've gone from outside to inside. So now what can you share back to people on the outside about things they might be not understanding or some common misconceptions people might have about real estate investing?
Yeah, one that I had that I see a lot of people come to us with is that the interest rate is the most important thing when it comes to your loan. That's a big misconception that really sets people off in the wrong direction, and one that can be pretty easily overcome by talking to a strategic broker or an organization that can assist you with the vision of where you're trying to get to and a step-by-step process. And the second one, I think, is you must buy a property within a drive of where you live. I had both of these before I had come and worked with Dashdot, and that was just what I thought needed to happen, and it's just not. It just doesn't have to be like that.
What do you think the main benefits are once you can overcome, like, the interest rate thing? Great, but like the kind of like buying in your local area versus buying, sight unseen in many cases. What do you think the main advantage of that is, or what advice would you give to someone who's still stuck in that mindset?
So, I mean, this obviously depends where you live, for one, because you could be in a fantastic area to achieve your goals, and you could be in not that. You could also be in an area that is incredibly out of your reach in terms of your affordability, and vice versa. And it's unlikely that to achieve your goal, potentially, just buying in your area alone, rather than having a balanced portfolio of perhaps different asset classes in different areas that get to ride the property clock, if you like, or different waves of growth at different times, are going to help you achieve where you're trying to be.
Nice. Now, you recently bought an investment property which certainly wasn't in your backyard. You then went and actually renovated it yourself. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that? You were living in Sydney, and then where did you buy? And then also, I'd really like to know what on earth compelled you to want to go and do the renovation on it yourself. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I bought a property in Townsville, one that had been under contract, but the building and pest came back pretty bad. and the client just ran away.
Ran away from the property. Ran away from the property, right? They didn't just like
ran away from the property. It wasn't one of our clients. It was just a property. And so I came across this property, and I knew it would go pretty quickly. So I understood where it was at. It needed a fair bit of work. I knew that was the case. The partner that we used wasn't able to do the renovation on the property or do what needed to be done. I would have been much happier not to do the renovation myself, just for clarity. But because he wasn't able to do that, and it was very challenging because it was a reasonable renovation, it needed boots on the ground. So with my ability to work from anywhere at Dashdot, I packed everything in the car and drove up to Townsville in a weekend and stayed there a lot longer than I planned to.
Nice. How long were you there in total?
4 months.
4 months? What exactly was wrong with this property, and why did it take 4 months?
It was a bit of a Pandora's box. The main thing that slowed us down was the ability to get trades. So every trade that I called had a wait list of a month or 2 months even to even come and have a look. There's just a huge trade shortage in that area, and I was at the pointy end of it. But because I'm a bit of an extremist and I just wanted to get my hands dirty, I was like, let me at it. I'll do whatever they can't do, I'll do, and off we went.
Super interesting. So what was the actual, you said that basically somebody was going to buy the property, the building and pest came back, it came back bad enough that whoever was going to buy the property said, no, I'm not interested. What was wrong with it? And why did you think, no, this still looks like a good deal to me?
Yeah, good question. So what was wrong with it? It hadn't been very well maintained. There's cracks through the walls. It didn't have gutters. It was a house in granny flat. The granny flat downstairs was a bit of a dump. It didn't even have a stove. Needed air cons. Like on and on the story went. But it did have the ability to rent it out separately, so 2 separate tenancies. And I saw at that point that would have been quite useful with interest rates moving the way they were moving. So it was the sort of uniqueness of the property that had me continue with the purchase.
So you say cracks in the walls and stuff. Was that structural, or was it? It sounds like some of that was cosmetic. The place looks like a dump, or like that kind of stuff. Seems like okay, fine, clean it up, all good. But was there structural issues, or talk to me about that?
Yeah, there was not structural issues, but there was just the property was it's like a bunker. It's a big concrete bunker with concrete in the middle. Every wall is concrete. The thing's solid, but it's obviously started to move. I got it checked out by an engineer, not structural in nature. However, to the untrained eye, it looked a little dodgy. There was cracks all the way through a lot of walls, and it definitely would have sent shivers up your spine if you didn't get the engineer's report.
Yeah, nice. Can we talk about some of the details? I'm very interested actually in this. Like, how much did you buy it for? How much did you spend on the renovation? Round figures is fine. How much did you spend on the renovation? Talk to us about some of the performance results. Have you got it rented out? Give us a little breakdown of it, because that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I bought it for $368. So it's a 4-bedroom upstairs, 1 bathroom, and a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom downstairs.
So 6 bedrooms in total. Split 2 down, 4 up. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought I was going to spend about 40 on the reno. ended up spending about double that, including holding costs. So spent about 80 in total, but did get an upswing. So took it from 368 to 480.
So 368 plus 80 on the reno and holding costs during that kind of 4-month period. That puts it up at 448, and then post renovated value was 480, right? So 480 minus 448. So you made 32 grand. But that was just in the first instance. That was pretty much like the post-renovation value. So that's without any kind of growth or any other factor in it. In hindsight, do you think it was worth it? Would you, if you knew everything you knew before you did the 4-month renovation, would you have bought that property?
It's a good question. I think yes, with the long-term view, because I know it still will grow, and I now know that when you're doing a renovation, you need to budget a little bit more, and I need to probably spend a little bit less, and all those sorts of things that you learn on the ground when you do something like that.
Do you think you overcapitalized on some things, or what was the biggest expense?
what did I overcapitalize on? I probably just did a little bit too much. Like there was certain things that I could have just not done. There was a crack in the tiles on the landing, but at that point I didn't know if it was structural or not, because there might have been rotting timber underneath and the stairs could have been dropping. So there was things that I didn't know. Spoke to builders and they were like, "Oh, we'll just pull the tiles up and see what's down there." So we pulled the tiles up thinking that we could just tile those things, but then we had to retile the whole thing and had to waterproof it and all this stuff that I just wanted to leave it. I just wanted to put a mat over the top of it and just leave it. But, I was trying to do stuff. I was trying to do some preventative maintenance, which I think I kind of got a little bit too carried away with. And in hindsight, I might have just left stuff like that, to be honest.
Yeah. Super interesting. And what about the yield on that property? So is that rented out now?
Yeah, the top level is rented out. So the 4-bedroom house is rented out, and the 2-bedroom unit has got a fair bit of interest. So I'm just looking at leases with the property manager this week.
Okay, so let's go. Come on, mate. Let's go through the numbers. Okay, so the top's rented out for how much? If you remember,
450.
450. Okay, 450 for the top. And what do you think the bottom's going to rent out for?
They've got it on for 350.
Ooh, that's pretty spicy. Do you reckon that's going to go at 350?
A bit spicy. It's a bit spicy because it doesn't have parking, so I think we might need to come down a little bit.
All right, so let's call it 300
with the agent.
So we'll call it 300 plus 450, right? So that's 750. So if you rent it out for 750, so 750 times 52 is 39,000. 39,000 divided by we'll call it 448,000. That's the post renovated cost. So you'd be looking at an 8.7% yield. You must be pretty happy with that.
Yeah. It's a good feeling in this environment to know that it's going to cover its own costs.
Yeah, nice. How do you think that experience has set you up to better serve investors? Because I think it's a pretty I haven't. We bought a property to renovate it, and then I just didn't start the renovation, and chucked a roof on it or whatever. But kind of done stuff like that in my past life. But how do you think that's set you up to better either understand the process or better empathize with investors? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, definitely to understand the process and know that there can potentially be, I'm not a professional renovator. I'm sure people could do it a lot quicker, better, faster and cheaper than me. But when people come with their own mindset that, you've got to add value, for example, on a property, you can, but it can go, it can blow out. There can be costs that can blow out, time can blow out and all that sort of stuff. So I think there are other ways to do it. It doesn't have to be, say, a renovation.
What are your thoughts now on adding value versus just buying the right property in the right place at the right time? Like if somebody was coming to you and saying, hey, which way should I go about it? Should I try and buy a property that I can fix her up, or should I just try and buy something and do nothing ideally? Like what do you think is the best move forward for people?
I think especially if you're far away from where that property is, that just buying a property in the right place at the right time is the way to go. Buying the right property. If you just stinging to get your hands dirty like I just wanted to throw myself into something, then potentially it'll suck up half a year and a bit of cash, and you can tell the story about it, which I've got. There's different strokes for different folks, but I certainly I would have preferred to have potentially done 2 properties rather than just the one and renovate.
Yeah, nice. So what does success look like for you? What does life look like in 25 years?
Oh, success to me is having passive income to give me options. I'm a bit of an adventurer, so I'd like to be, riding around the world on motorbikes and sailing around the world on yachts and living on an island. In 25 years, I probably would have done all that. 25 years, have a family, definitely live on an island with good surf, no traffic. I'm not going to be hanging out holding the wheel. It's not going to be me. So living a simple but fulfilling life.
Nice. You talked about cold exposure and some breath work and stuff like that earlier. Do you have any habits or rituals specifically that help you stay on track, motivated, moving towards your goals?
Yeah, the breath work has become an assistant with that. Keeping the little deal that I have with myself. I've said to myself that I'm going to do it, so it keeps integrity. Every day I wake up, I do 30 deep breaths when I wake up with a breath hold at the end, hold for as long as I can, and I do 3 rounds of that. That energizes me for the day. It helps me focus. It helps me get started rather than, banging down some caffeine or something like that. It feels a little bit more natural and energizing.
Hang on a second. You said you don't do caffeine at all. So it's not just the breathwork plus caffeine. You've literally, or what's going on there?
So I've only picked up caffeine since I'm not working on my feet. So I don't need it when I'm moving. When I'm sedentary, I need caffeine after lunch. I don't need it, but I have it. That's a habit now. But I in the morning, I've never, ever had caffeine to wake up.
Super interesting. And so how do you think the breath work, and I know that you go out and surf and stuff like that too. Why do you think that gives you more energy, or what's the kind of thinking or the science behind that?
Oh, there's so much. I've read a bit of Wim Hof. I'm about to read another book that'll give me a lot more understanding of it. It's about oxygenating and getting more carbon dioxide in and out. And to be honest with you, I'm not 100% on the science. I've been told it a few times. It hasn't really sunk in. I'm more interested in the benefits without understanding it at this point, but I will learn more about it. Because funnily enough, that course that I did last year, I've actually signed up for an instructor course. Not because I want to instruct, but just because I want to get deeper and harder into it. So I'll have a good answer for you after that.
Super interesting, super interesting. And if you could go back 10 years and meet your former self 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
With where I was and what I was doing, you know, the scenes that I was in and stuff, I probably would have just say to get on a full-time wage. I was on casual at that point, and I got offered to buy the rental property I was in Bondi, and I would have just said, just buy it. Those two things would have put me in a pretty good position for now, and wouldn't have been a detriment at all.
Yeah, nice. And what advice or insights or inside knowledge would you share with someone who's thinking about working with Dashdot but might be sitting on the fence?
I'd say start with a portfolio growth plan. It'll give you a good insight into where you're trying to get to and organize your thoughts. It'll also give you a really good chance to see how we work and how we think, and some of the cool tech that we use to get people fantastic results.
Have you got any interesting stories? Since you've been building portfolio plans for people, you've actually been building portfolio growth plans and getting deep in the strategy. What has been the biggest revelation that you've seen, or the biggest transformational, I guess, insight that you've potentially delivered to someone? Because it's pretty wild once you actually can see the future, so to speak.
Yeah. The light has been shone on where the roadblocks are likely to come up, and trying to think strategically now about how to overcome those in the future, whether that's cash flow, capital, or borrowing capacity. Assisting our clients to shine that light on them, just that they can't believe that we're doing that for them. No one else has even talked to them about it. They'd ask their broker, what loan should I get? They tell them 80% P&I. No one's thinking 4, 5, 6 properties down the track. So I think that's the big thing. So we've got an eye to that future, and we're trying to assist them navigate that now.
How big of a change do you think that makes? Because in my experience, most people, as to your point, have got no idea what the future holds. So they're sort of investing and guessing. They're like, pretty sure if I invest, I'm eventually going to get to where I want to get to, but they've got no real optics. They don't understand, A, are they going to get there? B, how long it'll take? C, they don't really understand that. Once you can give people the optics, it changes the game. In my experience, have you? Because all of a sudden it becomes tangible and real, and they get to make real decisions, and also they get to live a better life today, because they might go, oh, okay, so I only need to do X. Perfect. Maybe that means I can do other things in my life today. Have you seen that kind of transformational change happen with people?
Yeah, absolutely. People that are, they might be doing a job that they want to get out of, and we present them the plan, and they go, wow, like in 11 years, like I can stop this job that I'm not into, or 9 years, or whatever it may be. And you see the change of people, and that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, nice. What do you want to be remembered for? Or do you want to be remembered? It's an interesting question as well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be remembered by the people that I've connected with. I don't necessarily want to be an Elon Musk or a Goose McGrath, but I certainly want to, be known by my friends and family as someone that helped them when they needed help, and just a fun and inspiring person to be around.
Nice. And if you could create a billboard, maybe hang it off Elon Musk's Starlink, right? A billboard that was big enough for everyone in the world to see, that was going to float around the world. One big message that you'd want to share with the world, what would that be?
I'm going to quote Grant Cardone, and that is, nothing happens to you, it happens because of you.
Nothing happens to you, it happens because of you. I like that. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Is there anything else that you think I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you want to share with people while we're doing this nice little podcast? I'm enjoying this, by the way. It's been a fun little adventure through Adam Land.
Adam Land. I can't think of anything that I haven't really shared. I've shared all the weird breathing and cold stuff. That was about as weird as I wanted to get. I'm sure there's small stuff, but
There's definitely weirder stuff than your breathing and the cold stuff.
100%,
Yeah.
whether it's relatable to this podcast or not is another question.
No, fair enough. Awesome. Well, Adam, it's been great. What I've enjoyed about this podcast is a lot of people go through transformational parts of their life. A lot of people don't. A lot of people say get to their 20s, they pick a career path, and that's they effectively cast the same life forward. And there's nothing wrong with that in any way, shape, or form. But there are people like you and people like me who have a life that has two distinct halves to it. In fact, it might happen more than that. You may end up with 3 or 4 or 5 really distinct types of or series or seasons of your life. And what I think is really interesting about your story specifically is, you've shown how that you can actually really transition successfully between these two very different stories, both beautiful and enriching in their own way, both impactful and meaningful in their own way, but very, very different. You've been able to do that quite successfully and, continue to have an impact along people along the way. And also, you've been deep in the learning yourself, not just in the practicing professionally, but also pushing yourself to go and learn. You didn't have to go and travel to Townsville to go and swing a hammer when you're working a full-time job, helping people to build their property portfolios. That's a lot to take on, but the desire for learning and growth was the desire to go and actually do that and start to actually tease that out and to get that experience for yourself. So I think there's a lot of lessons in here for people to think about personal growth and transformation, how they can start to apply that in their life. Do you think it's a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Adam, it's been fun. I really appreciate you coming on. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Goose.
Speak soon. Bye.